Let's get to the big news of the week. We knew it was coming, and yet everybody is reacting like it's a whole news story. So let's react to it with our fellas here. There's Eddie Spaghetti behind the glass in his usual spot. He's licking his wounds because Tibbs was shown the door after that loss to the Pacers. And there's Kevin Hench, clutch shooter, must be reveling in his fellow clutch shooter Haliburton's effort to break the hearts of everybody gathered around in OKC on Thursday night. Kevin Hench, what's the poop? How are you, fella? Aaron Rodgers, Pittsburgh Steelers. How say you?
Condolences. Obviously, you know where I
Hmm.
stand on this. It's just, I don't know, like, I don't know what the Steelers need to do, but whatever they need to do, they're delaying it for a year because, the 41-year-old guy, the 20th ranked quarterback in the NFL is just not going to get you to the promised land. And I was actually thinking this morning, like, it's weird when you're doing your fantasy draft and you realize during the fantasy draft how shitty the guys on the team you root for are. You're like, oh, Ramondre Stevenson is not good. This is everybody knows he's not going to have a good year. And then I was thinking about because I've been burned by DK. DK's so up and down, and like obviously can have an incredible game and then disappear for a month. And I was like, DK is not going to be a sought after wide receiver. Like DK's not going for 85 catches for 1,300 yards and 12 TDs. He's just not, and like, it now, everyone's going to know it. And it's going to, I don't know how that's going to happen, but DK Metcalf owners are going to be like, 3 catches for 41 yards. What the fuck? What's going on? And so anyway, I don't hate the Steelers the way some people do, but there are people who already hate the Steelers who also hate Rodgers. So this could be, just a glorious year for Steeler haters.
It is funny, and I don't know how much that outside noise matters to anybody on the banks of the Three Rivers or inside the Steelers building. Like I keep saying, they should have seen sinners. You don't invite the soul sucker into your building on purpose and expect to come out clean from that. And you're right. Here's just one text that I got from an ex pro football player who said, to your point, he's going to make the Steelers villains this year, people actively rooting against them because he's the worst. I think there is some of that out there. And then there are his defenders who are now digging their heels in and sort of doing this performative thing of like, I don't get it. Why is everybody so upset about Aaron Rodgers? Like, the in Sinners, the guy who was invited into the building could take your culture and make it his own. He didn't have the ability to give you amnesia, but apparently a lot of people are suffering from that the last 3 years, very much like what happened with Russell Wilson. I get that the brand name is good. Russell Wilson was in a couple of Super Bowls back to back and on a great team. Aaron Rodgers was on a great team. He won a Super Bowl 15 years ago. Steelers fans remember that because that was the last time the Steelers were in a Super Bowl too. That was a long time ago though. So the idea that you're getting the brand
You
name
should
Aaron
bring
Rodgers,
up
future Hall of Fame, that sounds good. It's like if you saw that again at TJ Maxx, same as Russell Will, like, hey, wow, look at this guy. Look the brand on this one. This guy's been to a Super Bowl and he's won all these MVPs. Yeah, it's out of style now. Everybody, hey, Coach T, this was very fashionable a half a decade ago. It no longer is. What it is, and you're exactly right, Hench, is that all it does is hit the pause button. It's this very strange sort of season that will exist in and of itself now that has no impact really on the trajectory long term of the team. And that's very weird. And now the people who support this move, a 1 year deal, never mind the fact that it is the sequel to the Expendables that we saw last year that nobody enjoyed with Russell Wilson in a co-starring role along with Mike Tomlin. Now, Russell Wilson has been shown the door and replaced by Aaron Rodgers in the starring gig. It doesn't change the fact that they didn't feel like here's the big explanation. from Tomlin and Khan and anyone who supports this method is who should they have gotten? There was no quarterback available in the draft that would have been worth it. And that's why they're delaying this. They're hitting the pause button. First of all, if you're enacting the Indianapolis Colts approach to winning football, the results have been tepid at best over the last half decade for that team, from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan and Phil Rivers and Joe Flacco and Gardner Minshew and every other cat that they rolled through there. That's what the Steelers are trying to do. And pay attention to the end result for the Colts. They crawled through that river of shit to get through clean on the other side to land Anthony Richardson. Is that the big prize? That's absolutely a plausible result. What should they have done? Like we've said ad nauseum, they should have kept Justin Fields. When he left the building, and by the way, it was pennies that would have made the difference, that would have closed that gap, unless you're of the mind that Justin Fields was so raw about getting yanked and played a good soldier while Russell Wilson was out there last autumn, unless you buy that Justin Fields was just not going to sign. If he got another offer, another viable offer, he was going to go there. Maybe that is the result. And maybe that speaks to the overestimation of Steelers' mystique to this generation of players. But the other one that was out there that, the Sam Darnold was the big ticket item, but Geno Smith was out there. So they could have had him, and that's a bridge quarterback. Very different, obviously, than Justin Fields and the way he plays the position, but those were viable options that they had, and they decided against taking those, and now they've brought this guy into the building, and at best, Hench, as we say, it just feels like it just is going to sit in this silo. The 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers season has no impact on what preceded or what follows here because it's a one-off. A lot of these vets are going to be gone after this season, no matter what happens here. So that's a weird spot to sort of be pregnant for 6 months now, upcoming as a football fan, 8 months. But it's also schizophrenic too. What's the plan? If the goal is to win right now, then why would you have given away George Pickens, who is in the last year of his deal? It would be one thing if it's like, we got to move on from George Pickens because this is bad for the era. He's gone after this year anyway. He would have given you the best chance of winning right now if, in fact, that was the goal. And if it is to get a higher draft pick in 2026, then why did you go get Aaron Rodgers if you think he's better than Mason Rudolph? Because Aaron Rodgers is going to win you an extra game or 3 over the course of the season, thereby moving you a little bit further away from the main goal, which seems to be getting as high a pick in 2026 as possible. It's all over the place. And I do think for all the people who are now out there saying, got to support this. Why? Says who? I'm a James Bond franchise fan. Doesn't mean I enjoyed the Timothy Dalton movies. I mean, I like it. I can wait for the Daniel Craig years. You're under no obligation to root for this. You're not a bad person if you root for or against this. The politics, everybody wants to inject the politics in there to make some point. Politics, Aaron Rodgers' politics are gray at best. So that thing, especially a week removed from, I don't know if you guys saw if this reached Football America, but it was a big deal on the banks of the Three Rivers last Friday that Mason Rudolph and Miles Killebrew and Rocky Blyer went to a Trump event at the Steel Factory and all of that. They're individuals. They're allowed to side politically with whatever side they want to. This is not that. This is, and the main point, as you get the football, if the main point isn't some three-dimensional human being type based conversation, it's just about the results on the field, that brings us all the way back to where Hench said much more simply than I just did over the last 28 minutes or however long I've been monologuing here. He's not very good. He's a third-tier quarterback. We're not talking about Aaron Rodgers, the MVP, or even a guy who's a tick down from that. He's a 41, 42-year-old man, and I get the raw numbers. The touchdown passes versus interceptions in 2024 weren't that bad, and he looked a little bit better down the stretch last year than he did. But he still is. The underlying numbers indicate he's about the 20th, 22nd best quarterback in the NFL right now. And all this nonsense to get that cat is, I'd like to say beneath the Steelers, but given the last 5 or 10 years, I mean, this seems to be who they are. How say you, Hench?
Well, I think first of all, to bring it all full circle, you were talking about that Super Bowl. The Steelers should make Rashad Mendenhall RB1. Bring him into camp
I like
to
that. Yeah.
give people a visual representative. Like it's
Hmm.
like, hey, here's what the running back who cost us that Super Bowl looks like.
Hmm.
Just so you know, the winning quarterback, that's our starting quarterback. That's how long ago this was. Um, the other thing you got me thinking is like, do you think Rocky Blyer, because Trump's on record as saying avoiding STDs that was his Vietnam? Do you think Rocky Blyer and Trump exchanged Vietnam stories? Hey man,
Interesting. That's
hey
a good
man,
question. That's a
hey,
that's a
did you
fascinating
make it out
question.
unscathed? Because I didn't, obviously. I didn't make it out unscathed, but I hope you did, POTUS. So the the
Speaking of patriotism, you brought that up last week, and I thought it was a great point. So Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers, very similar. Well, Justin Fields had just gotten benched for Russell Wilson on Monday Night Football, I think it was, or was it Sunday Night Football when Rodgers and the Jets came to Pittsburgh last season. So now it'll be Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers going to play Justin Fields and the Jets. And the big question is, will first of all, Eddie Spaghetti contends that the fans in New York/New Jersey will cheer for Aaron Rodgers. Will he bring the American flag? That's the big question.
as
Does
a
he do that
visitor
again?
he can't carry any extra weight because the other Achilles could go at any second. And it's funny, when you talk about the football of it all, the one thing you did notice for sure with Rodgers, because obviously when you look at the passing numbers are the passing numbers, but the pocket presence, that little escapability, like Rodgers always was awesome at extending the play. He was Mahomes before Mahomes was Mahomes. Like, I know, oh, I can get the first down. That guy doesn't have the angle. I can scoot for 7 yards. And that was vanishing rapidly last year. Like
Agree.
he was looking for grass. He did not want, so now it's going to be Myles Garrett. Like I don't see that part
They
of your
can't.
game.
What happens is, Hench, and you're a much better athlete, much deeper into your existence than I ever was. But like if you talk to high end athletes as they get into around 40, it's not that the whip goes; it's that their legs go. You can see Aaron Rodgers when he is off the back heel, he still has that live arm. What he can't do is work around the edge the way he used to. He's not as elusive. He can't extend plays the way he did 5 years ago. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Well, so I just think it's funny to the football of it all because that's all you really need to be looking. I mean, the other stuff is all downside. I mean, like so whatever they do, wins, losses, 9-8, 8-9, 7-10. It's just going to be a fucking headache. It's just a headache.
That's
So
my point.
so you're like,
Destroyer of worlds. That. I mean, like
you've
that's what
invited the
I care about.
sinner into the house. And the question is, and this maybe will be our transition to Thibodeau and DeBoer, but like, could things go sideways enough that the Steelers decide maybe it's time to move on from Mike Tomlin?
I think that is reasonably in play in a year in which we've already seen the Penguins show, multiple cup champ Mike Sullivan the door and the Buccos zero championship winner Derek Shelton the door. I wouldn't think it's insane if this results in that because again, it is a repeat of a failed effort a year ago. And if you sort of look at the bigger picture and start the clock somewhere around the time that you say pre-Roethlisberger elbow injury, if you start the clock somewhere around the time that they're making the run to Foxborough 2016, they're getting real close. The Killer Bees with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and Roethlisberger and a really good defense and the Ryan Shazier football tragedy notwithstanding, you still expect them to take down the Jaguars and all of that, and they get housed at home. That's disconcerting. If you're a Tomlin um, skeptic, I think that's the chief piece of evidence. That and the loss to the Browns, because they didn't just lose those games. They were down a combined score of 380 to negative 20 by the end of the first quarter in those two playoff games to teams that they should have really taken care of. Um, those are bad, but in the last, basically since since Ryan Shazier and then Levy and Bell's holdout, there are any number of people that Tomlin could kind of point at and blame, whether it was the previous GM, Kevin Colbert, or the tragedy of Shazier, or Tuitt's retirement, or George Pickens being a pain in the ass, or Kenny Pickett not developing, or Mitchell Trubisky being an overreach. There are a ton of things that you could credibly sort of say that didn't work out the way we thought it was. That guy wasn't as good as we thought. I think it all comes to a head right now. This is a willful repeat of what they did a year ago. So, yes, I think if they completely fall on their face, I could see them making a case to show him the door. I don't think that's in play, though. I think that, as I keep saying, Mason Rudolph, at minimum, his floor with this roster would be 8 wins in a 17-game schedule. And so I think Aaron Rodgers probably does get them to a minimum if he's healthy for 17, which is assuming a great deal. But 9 wins, 10 wins, that's fine. I think the X factor, not to get a little deep in the weeds for people who don't care that much about the Steelers, but the X factor of them all for this team is Broderick Jones, their first round draft pick 2 years ago. He's now going to be at left tackle. If he holds up, if he is anywhere close to his pedigree of a mid-first round guy at tackle, that offensive line is going to be a position of strength. DK Metcalf is a difference maker. That's why they shouldn't have traded George Pickens. The defense should be good. They're going to win 9 games. They're going to win 10 games. They're going to win 11 games. The question is going to be, is it all worth it if it equals a wild card exit? Is a win, is playing in the divisional round in and of itself worth the mess that's going to happen from this? I don't think so. I do think that, and then we can move on. But I think what's interesting is that part of this has been sold as it would be disrespectful to the vets for Tomlin to roll with Mason Rudolph or Will Howard, which is a silly conversation that has broken out in Pittsburgh. Yeah, they should start the 6th round pick. That would be a great approach to Steelers fans. This mess has made people so crazy that they're talking about, like, oh, I think Will Howard's the next Ben Roethlisberger. The 6th round pick is the next Ben Roethlisberger because they played college football in the same state.
It would be disrespectful. It would be disrespectful to the vets to not have a quarterback old enough to be a Vietnam vet.
I think Cam Hayward likes that. Here's what I think. I don't know this, but you can pick up, you can read the tea leaves from a distance. Cam Hayward was in on this, likes this move, and thinks that it gives them their best chance of winning. I don't know about TJ Watt. I am curious to see what goes down in the coming days and weeks. His brother makes noise on social media and on McAfee and otherwise about the deal and the sequence. Why did they pay DK Metcalf before they paid TJ and all of that? And I think that TJ Watt, as I keep saying, there isn't, unless he thinks that Aaron Rodgers can get him to the Super Bowl, and I don't think anybody this side of Mike Tomlin believes Aaron Rodgers can get him to the Super Bowl. I don't think Aaron Rodgers thinks he can get the Steelers to the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised. I'll be curious to see what happens with TJ Watt and the Steelers between now and training camp. I think they'll probably resolve it, but I wouldn't be surprised if TJ Watt is more quietly upset by this than what's been indicated so far. Anyhow,
well, just to round it off, if you talk about Tomlin, well, last year, Robert Saleh was the coach of the Jets. The owner of the Jets and the de facto GM of the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, both thought they had an elite quarterback. So Aaron Rodgers thought the Jets had an elite quarterback, and Woody Johnson and his teenage son thought they had an elite quarterback. So it was like, why aren't we winning? We should fire the coach because he can't figure out how to unlock this elite quarterback we have. So now the Steelers go into a situation where it's like, do you guys think you have an elite quarterback? And then when you're not winning games, people are going to look at the head coach like, hey man, why aren't you have this Hall of Fame quarterback and you're in 3rd place in your division?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how algebra worked. I checked out, like we've talked about, around the times that the multiplication tables went into double digits. I got 10, I understood 11, but 12, that was a bridge too far for me. So algebra, I was completely out on. But it's like the constant is kind of the point of algebra, right? And the constant now is Mike Tomlin. As they roll through the variables at quarterback, Tomlin is the one who keeps being there. So if this doesn't work, then yeah, I don't know who else you look at. I think you could look at Tomlin and Omar Khan over the last couple of years and kind of point the finger at them. Final guess, Hench, as we sit here in June, and we'll modify it. But what do you think? Where do you think this? How do you think this adds up? Let's project, in fact, all the way to New Year's Day ish. Where are the Steelers in the AFC North standings?
7-10, third place.
Really? Wow, that bad. I'm more bullish on them actually than you are. I think
But
they're
I mean, I think that, it's like you can't, I don't know, like talk about Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't think you can just blow by what the defense did of the last 6 weeks last year. I don't think
I
you can just go
completely
like,
agree.
they're going to be fine. That's a position of strength. We need a game manager. If you can score 17 or 20 points, you're going to win. Really? You're going to beat Joe Burrow 17-16? That's the plan? So I just don't think that they're, and of course, if you split with the Browns, now you're in real trouble. I just think it could, and I talked last week or the week before about those two games sandwiching his 42nd birthday, Bills Ravens. So, you're going to be getting points in those games. You're going to be expected to lose those games. So the at Baltimore shit kicking following his 42nd birthday, and we don't know if that's taking place in Egypt or Oaxaca. We'll just have to wait to see what he feels like to have that 42nd birthday celebration.
Both of those are happening. They're in Oaxaca and Egypt in his mind. I think that like we talk about, the Jets game, it precedes those games. And if Aaron Rodgers loses to Justin Fields in week one, I really just don't know where they go from there as a team. The buy-in from the guys in the locker room, if that is the result right out of the gate, really, they're going to be lost at sea immediately, and it will barely have been Labor Day. Spaghetti, where do you think they come in the AFC North standings?
I think they're in the 11 win range in second place. I think they're going to be above the Browns clearly, and I just don't really love what's going on in Cincinnati right now. And I also said, I believe I said a week or two ago, that I do think that Baltimore, like a lot of their success last year was based on the old legs of Derrick Henry not slowing down. Just what happens if Derrick Henry is no longer to be seen. I think they struggle a little bit. They're still a pretty good squad. So I think right now the Steelers just, based on the track record with Tomlin and such, and I still think a large amount of Rodgers' problems last year with the Jets just being the Jets in an awful situation. I still think 10-11 wins is not out of the question.
Well, the buzz is, as we record, is that the next member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's not a joke, will be Alan Lazard. And one last thing, and then we'll move on. I do think the semi-sad bit of irony for Aaron Rodgers is that he is aware to some degree that of the perception of who he is, and so I do think that, like, it was a big deal in Pittsburgh a couple months ago when Pat McAfee had his live show at the arena, sold out, and a lot of people thought that's when Aaron Rodgers is going to announce. And at the draft, it would make sense for Aaron Rodgers to reveal that that's what he's going to do, and that's part of the strategy as they go into this draft. This is what they're doing this year. No, very quiet. What's going on there? I really do believe that Aaron Rodgers and his handlers thought, let's keep a real nice low profile, Aaron. Let's not be a distraction at all. And in trying to not do the Aaron Rodgers experience for the Steelers, he provided the Aaron Rodgers experience that has now made some percentage of Steelers fans semi-raw about Aaron Rodgers for not showing up, which is kind of funny. It's also kind of funny that Darius Slay took to the microphone, the newest Steeler, and says last week, like, this is when championship rosters are put together, when they come together, like, well, the QB isn't there, Darius. That couldn't be an accident that you just said that on purpose into a microphone. So I think there is potentially going to be some discord between now. Well, we'll see what happens at minicamp. I think people are going to be saying all the right things all the way up until August at this point. So, um, you know, people keep coming to me with trying to put stuff on me because they support Aaron Rodgers, the guy, or what I'd say. I don't understand where you're coming from on all of this. I think that you know what? Let's move on. Let's move on because I could do another 20 minutes on this subject, but I do want to get to some other stuff here. I want to get to Tibbs and I want to get to the Stanley Cup Final. That's been the big buzz. The one thing that people have missed with this, I don't know. We've been having this conversation for about 18 months now. Isn't it weird that McJesus and Draisaitl have never won a championship together? The conversation has been whittled down to like McJesus needs this for his legacy, ignoring the fact that Draisaitl is one of the top 5 players in the league too. He gets the overtime winner in game 1. Interesting to see what plays out there. But let's talk about game 1 in OKC. Hench Haliburton wins it at the buzzer just after SGA misses the mid-range jumper from the elbow that likely puts the game away for the Thunder.
It's just become kind of like rinse and repeat in these NBA playoffs. Obviously, Spaghetti and I both went through it. Spaghetti's Knicks did it to the Celtics in games 1 and 2. Celtics had 20-point leads. Then, what happens is the team that's getting blown out just starts playing free and easy. The team that sees a 20-point lead go to 12 is like, hey, could we lose this game? Well, we should get tight. We should start missing all these shots and we should start taking bad shots. And so then Spaghetti had to live through literally the precise mirror image of a 6-game series loss to the Pacers that the Knicks pinned on the Celtics with a catastrophic collapse in game 1, including, just a series of improbable shots from Aaron Nesmith. I guess you could say the Haliburton buzzer beater to force overtime in game 1 against the Knicks was as absurd given the bounce as Miles Turner's bank shot was last night against the Thunder. Like, these are ridiculous events that are happening. These are, there's a reason after every NBA playoff game, the quants post how rare this sequence, how many points you were behind at this thing, never happened in the NBA finals, never happened, and it's like over and over and over again. All the rest of the NBA is 4 for 26 on shots to tie or go ahead in the final 15 seconds. And Haliburton is 5 for 5. Like, it's insane, obviously, but the psychological thing that is real is like my Celtics in games 1 and 2 against the Knicks, Spaghetti's Knicks in game 1 against the Pacers. I'd say someone's name and attribute it to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but I don't know anybody who was for the Thunder. Somebody's Thunder. They visibly get tight. Like, Jalen Williams went 6 for 19. When they needed him to make a shot, you knew he wasn't making a shot. Like, he tried to will it to happen. It's like, you're already a mess. And then, of course, SGA's last 2 forays that could have won the game. He shoots a 3-footer into Siakam's elbow and bricks the shot that would have put him up 3. And really did nothing if he wasn't getting bailed out by foul calls. He was he was completely reliant on the foul merchanting at the end of that game as the Thunder were. So I don't even remember the Theranos documentary with Elizabeth Holmes. Was that her name?
Right.
So in that documentary, which was fantastic, and you're like, kind of like, why are people believing this woman who doesn't have a medical degree, doesn't have a science degree? She's telling you, I've invented this blood test machine that with a pinprick, you can do what used to take a centrifuge and a pint of blood. And like, I can do it in 15 seconds. And people were like, that's awesome. Here's $100 million. Like, do you want to see some stats? And then there was a guy in that documentary named Dan Ariely, who's a behavioral economist, and he was awesome. And he was talking about, he turned out later that I think he's a fraud, but anyway, but it was still interesting. Like the woman he's talking about, I'm also a fraud. Everyone's a fraud. That's the takeaway. But he was talking about why people behave the way they behave. Why people cheat on tests when the proctor leaves the room. Why, how you can, if people are given test questions, but that they know the answer to, but then you put them under stress, you're like yelling things at them when they're supposed to be getting the answer that they know. There are all these different variables, and the behavioral economics of home teams blowing big leads in the era of the three-pointer. What I'm seeing is the curse of Sposta, as you always say, the curse of Sposta gets to 100%. You've got a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. You're at home, and you were a huge favorite to begin with. Like, obviously, you can't lose the game. You're a 9.5-point favorite at tip-off. Now you're up 15 with 9 minutes and 42 seconds left. And then you see...
And, that also, you're exactly right about all of it, and why that's extra weird, specific to shooting the basketball is. Historically, the role guys are, shoot at a much higher percentage with the familiar background and all of that of their home gym versus going out on the road. So it is contrary to history.
But now it's it's pressure. And again, guys don't get tight on layups, although maybe Chet Holmgren did, because he certainly gacked a 4-inch shot that I thought he was going to dunk. But basically they, the Thunder missed a bunch of shots that they normally make when the behavioral economics are not working against them. And then at the other end, the Pacers, kept having these kind of chaos plays where it's like, oh my God, the guy jumped in the air with 2.5 seconds on the shot clock. He barely got rid of it. And then that guy made a desperation pass, and then that guy threw it at it. It's in the basket. It's a fucking three-pointer. You gave up the maximum number of points, even though you suffocated them for 23.5 seconds. Or, as happened multiple times, they shoot an air ball with 1.5 seconds on the shot clock, and the guy catches it and lays it in. Here's your reward for that 23 seconds of defense. They scored again. I mean, so you have these two things going on where it's insane results, just kind of chaos results at one end, and then the Thunder tightening in front of your eyes at the other end, and that the global choking of, could we lose this fucking series because we couldn't beat a team that turned it over 24 times to our 6 turnovers?
Well, do you think they're in peril? God. And we can kind of marry that with the Oilers blowing a 3-1 lead too.
The Panthers.
I'm sorry. The Panthers blow the lead. Do you think, much like the Knickerbockers, that's like the storyline that's come off of the Pacers Knickerbockers thing? They just couldn't overcome losing that game one. But it's a 7-game series, and not to be hyper focused on just that immediate result, but that, I guess, is a strike against your head coach. And I've seen some sentiment, at least from Knickerbocker diehards, saying, "Yeah, it was time. This is a good move." I completely get the notion of talking yourself into, this guy got us to a certain point, but to get over the hump, we have to go the extra. Doug Collins had to be replaced by Phil Jackson for Michael Jordan to get over the hump. There are historical chapters that you can kind of point to that justify this. I'd be real spooked if I were a Knickerbockers fan. Eddie Spaghetti is the resident New York fan. How say you?
It's a terrible move. You have to now, no matter what, no matter who you hire, if they do not reach Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals this upcoming season, you have to fire them. That's how my brain works, because you cannot fire a coach that brought you to the ECF for the first time in 25 years, a guy who's consistently brought you to the playoffs, I believe, 4 to 5 seasons. I think only 2021 was the only season they missed. They improved every year and getting deeper into series. And Shek, you just brought up the Game 1 where Haliburton hit his the clutch 3 or 2-pointer rather. if they win that game, like let's be honest, like the Knicks are playing in the NBA Finals. So if they win that game, they're up. The series feels different. They have a game advantage over them. And you firing a guy that brings like for all his faults and playing guys that too many minutes and whatever. He still has a defensive system. He has guys that bought in. Players seem to love playing for him, and he brought the Knicks back from the cellar to a team that's respected, a team that you expected to be in the playoffs, and a team that you expect to win playoff series. And whatever, Tatum gets hurt in the series where it's the Celtics. People are saying that wasn't a real series, and they can't get over the Pacers. Some of the Pacers have consistently beat them in the playoffs. But I don't know. There's a coach out there who could replace him, and it makes sense to they're going to get better, like Mike Malone. Like the guy that had Nikola Jokic, who's the best player in the NBA currently, one of the best players of all time. You think that guy's not going to come into the Knicks situation and be better? And if they don't reach the ECF or get to the NBA Finals, then you're taking a step backwards. So I mean, I'll retract this if they have other roster moves in mind. If they are going to move Cat, I've seen some rumors for Giannis or whatever. But if
I was just going to say, I
keeping
think
the
that's
roster as is.
I bet you that's what it's about, right? Is to position themselves to make themselves more attractive to Giannis, right?
Hold on, and this ties into my other point about like the reason why they fired him. And it's like, if it is a roster-based move, like they're going to make future moves with the players, and some players are unhappy. Which, by all accounts, it doesn't seem to be. Like I know Josh Hart and a few other guys, Bridges, like they've all posted stuff being very positive of Tibbs, and I just like if it is a roster thing, because all right, so Shams Charania broke the news that I think he went on McAfee and was like basically saying it's a voice in the locker room thing, which is the most tired excuse. And I tweeted like this is an NHL type move. Peter DeBoer just got fired by the Dallas Stars before. The team statement said needed a new voice in the locker room. That's the go-to move for every NHL team, and now it's going to become an NBA thing, like where you just keep moving from retread coach to retread coach and hoping you use like light a match and it creates like a fire. Why are we not blaming the team? Why are we no longer blaming the guys in the locker room? Like how many times is it the coach's fault? Also, how about this? James Dolan, you own the Rangers and the Knicks, the team that plays in the same building as the Knicks. They went through five coaches in like four coaches in 5 years. They went from Vigneault into who is it? Quinn, and then you bring in David Quinn, Jar Gallant, Peter after that. Now you're bringing Sullivan. It's like that went through many roster changes. You had number one overall draft pick, the second overall draft pick. You went from Henrik Lundqvist to Igor Shesterkin, and nothing mattered. You still got to the ECF and you still lost. And you keep changing the coaches, thinking it's going to spark something, and it's not. I just don't see where the benefit is from this move. You're getting rid of a guy.
It's the Yankees before you walk the planet Earth, Spaghetti. Steinbrenner, that was his thing. I mean, people forget about, in 77 and 78 when the Yankees were, in 76 even, Billy Martin was not a constant. Bob, what was the guy's name? Bob Lemon? Hench? Those cats that were
Ralph Hauk, Dick Hauser. I'm trying to remember. I mean, because they would fire Billy and bring him back in like the same season, right?
Yeah,
like it was crazy.
And then Michigan in '89 fires their coach and they win the national championship, Glenn Robinson and all of that. But generally speaking, yes, Spaghetti, the firing of a head coach happens like, boy, this season isn't going the way we wanted it to, and we need to spark the team midway through the year and see if we can turn. It feels like this is a particular thing in this stage in the human experience that like, oh, we didn't win it all, blow it all up. Pete DeBoer is now out the door. Like, I mean, he was, he's a game or 2 games away from reaching the Stanley Cup final, and the same is true with Tibbs here. And now you're blowing it up. It sort of makes me think of the Joe Montana versus Tom Brady debate, which is that the Brady advocates will say like, yeah, Tom Brady lost some Super Bowls. Joe Montana was clean in his 4 Super Bowls, but that's because he didn't get to the Super Bowl in the first place. The achievement was Brady dragging those teams to get to the big game, same as John Elway did in the 80s a couple of times. That was the great achievement.
And just for the record, Tom Brady didn't play with the greatest non-quarterback in NFL history, which I think has been established if you go back and listen to a recent podcast.
I heard about that. Yeah, I did hear about that.
Well,
But
listen,
yes,
this is what's funny because I'm with Spaghetti on Tibbs.
it's very weird.
So the I go back to Brian Billick, right? Brian Billick's an offensive genius. He runs up all those points with the Vikings. Gary Anderson misses the field goal, and then Billick, the offensive genius, lands in Baltimore. Okay, offensive genius doesn't really understand what goes on the other side of the ball, has no bearing on it. Not my bag. I'm doing these X's and O's. You guys handle the other side of the ball. And it's like, hey, your quarterbacks are Tony Banks and Trent Dilfer. Oh, you're not an offensive genius anymore? You literally, your team cannot score a touchdown. What's that big shiny thing on your hand? That's a Super Bowl ring. Why? Because Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were playing on the other side of the ball. I didn't have to do a goddamn thing to win a Super Bowl. I'm an offensive genius. Then cut to Tibbs. Tibbs is a defense first guy. He's a defensive genius. If he has the horses, he's going to maximize the roster. What happens to Tibbs? He gets two guys who are almost unplayable defensively, who can't come off the floor at the end of games because they're the two best offensive players on the team. So he has to sit there and watch his two guys get targeted over and over and over again when he's the defensive guy. Like, it's like, I don't like players like this. I did not say, please get me Karl Anthony Towns, a guy who's unstoppable at one end and can't guard anybody at the other end. So it's a kind of a wash. You know, there were sequences in that Pacer series where I'm like, Cat should have 50. He scores every time he puts his head down. Nobody can guard this guy. And then at the other end, it's like, Cat's not just going under screens. He's standing behind the basket. Like, he's not challenging anything. You're 7 feet tall, and in 6 games where they targeted you relentlessly, you have 1 block shot. I mean, I know he's not a jumper, but like, you haven't blocked shots by accident. You haven't blocked any of the putbacks by 6'8" guys around you. Like, how invisible are you defensively? So there might be for Tibbs a little bit of like, oh, thank Christ I don't have to watch the defensive abomination of Cat. And I think, you know, it's slightly less conspicuous because he's less clumsy, but like Jalen Brunson's not a good defensive player. And like Brunson, there were a couple plays where, like, you know, on an offensive rebound attempt by the Pacers, Brunson's just grabbing the guy. Like, he's got no real, you know, physical abilities on defense. So for Thibodeau, the guy who made his bones on defense, to have to, you know, lose because his two best players are just not good at defense. So I don't know what the plan is for the next guy. I have heard that one of the targets is Durant, who
my God,
I watched for some reason, mostly because I made a weird bet on them, but
Achilles, old. Sounds
I watched
very
a
Pittsburgh.
lot of Phoenix Suns basketball. You know, you kind of go like, hey, what's going on the West Coast? And man, they were dreadful. And Durant would be, you know, 11 for 18 for 30 points, and you're like, it's invisible. This production is invisible. It does nothing. There's zero impact on the game. So if you look, it's funny because Cat and Durant have, their statistics are shockingly exactly the same. Durant shot 52.7% from the floor. Towns shot 52.6. Durant shot 84% from the line. Towns shot 83%. Durant was 43% from three. Towns was 42%. They're the exact same player offensively. Durant gets a few more assists, although that number went way down last year. And you're like, what? This would be the Rodgers move. Like, what? How is this going to get you closer to the promised land, getting a 37-year-old guy?
It's what James Dolan would have done 10, 15 years ago. And to his credit, he has not done that. They've been a model of consistency since 2022. If you bring in Durant, you are now wiping out all of the goodwill that Tibbs installed into this franchise and made. And obviously, you know, Leon Rose too in the front office. But what Tibbs, the culture he built where the fan base is now expecting to win, because before then it was like a decade of a playoff drought, and then before like the 2012 season it was another 10 years before that. This is not a team that just makes the playoffs. Like if you bring in a new coach and then you bring in Durant, there's a chance they do not make the playoffs because the Knicks are not consistent. It would be another Achilles tendon to the franchise. Exactly what it would be, pun intended.
Hey, it's funny to me that given the Cat performance that ultimately didn't result in the Knickerbockers beating the Pacers, but still, it's weird that Chet doesn't get that their bigs, that OKC's bigs, which seem like a major advantage over the Pacers, aren't out on the floor in critical minutes in the fourth quarter. I bet you that changes and swings the series. I mean, what happens
that's crazy though. That is like, you talk about coaching, and coaches, like, they have their rotation. Here's what I would like to do if the game goes according to plan. And then you see moments where coaches switch it up and they're like, I just think Mitchell Robinson gives us a better chance in this situation. Cat's going to be on the bench for these minutes in the fourth quarter. The fact that they had 11 minutes worth of review to get their shit together, and Daniel sent out those smalls for the final possession when Hartenstein both sets the best screens. So you're trying to free up SGA for a shot. That's what you want. You want to get SGA the best shot possible. You don't think having Hartenstein on the court gives you the best shot to get SGA the best shot possible? Secondarily,
well, those two guys also work the off. He and Chet both work the offensive glass and have such an advantage over the Pacers specifically.
The backup chance to win the game is have your best offensive rebounder on the court. So, right, they're so small. And then, there's just this fatal moment where Caruso takes a step like he's going to blitz Haliburton, which I think would have been a good move, probably. Just live with anything else. Don't let the guy who's 5 for 5 in this situation take the shot. But when Caruso takes the step towards Haliburton, Wallace, for a split second, thinks he has to scramble to Siakam. So it's like, okay, if we're switching this, I have to go here. And then Caruso goes, psych, we're not switching it. I'm staying with Siakam. And Wallace is like, fuck, I took a half a step towards your guy. And that's all the daylight that Haliburton needed. Ironically, against two junkyard dog defenders who had amazing games defensively, they get their wires crossed and you lose.
Okay. We'll wind it down here. Maybe we could do an episode earlier next week rather than later, because I feel like there's so much meat still on the bone. I mean, there was 20 or so, 25 years ago, there was this movement with all the football networks where they put like the most famous, most accomplished football player in a big spot, and then they all sort of collapsed. It felt like within a 6-week period, like Marino and Emmitt Smith and Joe Montana, like nobody was good on television. And now there's one singular guy doing that for hockey, and that is the puffy-faced old lady named Wayne Gretzky, weighing in on Stanley Cup hockey as though he's watched more than 6 minutes of the season. It's fascinating. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about all the controversies, all the rivalries playing out before us right now. Aaron Rodgers, and some percentage of people in Pittsburgh and all of that, but our president versus the guy who owns Twitter playing out. But what about very quickly before we wrap it up here? What is going on exactly, Hench, with Simmons and Pablo Torre? Was so Torre has been all over the Belichick and Jordan at UNC thing, and then Simmons was like, you're talking about it too much? Is that basically the thing? And was it because really that it was like, I'm a Patriots guy, I'm a Boston sports guy, you're talking about it too much? That's the way it's been couched if you're, skimming the headlines.
I mean, I'm not fully read in on.
Oh, you're not? Okay. I didn't know if you were more up to speed than I was.
But this is my take, because a buddy of mine was like, hey, did you hear Simmons and Pablo Torre that, Simmons had him on the pod and it's really good and you should listen to it. And I was like, wow, were they going at it? And then, so my knowledge of it is kind of texts from my buddy explaining it to me. But like my read on it is, whatever. Everybody's clout chasing clicks, clicks, clicks. And so it's like, oh, there's this obviously salacious celebrity story where the greatest NFL coach of all time is banging a 24-year-old with the help of Blue Chew or whatever. Fantastic. So it's very salacious. We're all like titillated, interested. And then it's like, oh, she's a nutter. And by the way, he's obviously a sociopath. Like, what? It's like we've never seen a weirder guy operate at a high level. Like, obviously, if it wasn't for football, he'd be homeless. Like, what this guy is like, he's such a weirdo.
Is that obviously true? I didn't know
Who would employ this guy if it wasn't for his ability on the defensive side of the ball? So anyway, so it's like big, like,
is tit. I never thought about this before, but when you just said titillate, is that where tit comes from? That because the bosom titillates fellas?
I don't think so. Titillate, I doubt it. But
okay, go ahead.
So he's like, so then
I doubt it. Why would you doubt that? Why would you have to say that you doubt me and put me in my place like that? Go ahead with your point.
No, I wasn't saying it like I doubt it. I was just saying I doubt that's the etymology, but I have to be proven wrong, So then Simmons made like kind of a tossed off remark on the rewatchables. Like he was just kind of making a joke about the Cracker Jack reporting. It's like, it's funny, I think, going back to the Doncic trade, how like Shams, has become our Adam Schefter of basketball, right? Like Shams is reporting it. Guys, Shams is reporting it. So then you're like, it's good, right? And that's kind of how you build your journalistic reputation. And so it's kind of like, guys, Pablo is on this story, like this non-story. And so I think Simmons was just making a joke, like, yeah, wow.
That's how it sounded to me, yeah. But then in the ensuing 12 hours, it blew up. It seemed it seemed sincere.
It's always good if a guy with a bigger reach, a much bigger following says your name, right? Like, it's like, so Pablo's like, oh, I'm going to get into it with Simmons because that's good for me. That's good for my brand. It elevates me, obviously, to be like fucking going toe to toe with the king. And it's like, Simmons like, well, I made a joke, but anyway. So then I guess to his credit, Simmons like, well, let's talk about it. And then the thing that I guess came out in the conversation with Simmons is that NFL teams who were not hiring him were aware of Lolita and were like that, Arthur Blank does not want to go out to dinner with his wife, his head coach, and a fucking child. Like, that's not going to be a fun time for Arthur Blank. So it's like whatever due diligence they were doing, they were like, do you know his girlfriend's 23 years old, 24 years old? Like,
I thought you had gotten your stories confused and we're dipping into the Epstein files now, going out with a child. But I understand what you mean now. Okay, I'm up to speed.
Obviously for NFL owners, that's fine in a president, but you don't want it in your head coach. So Pablo's point is like, this is a football story. This doesn't belong.
Of course it is. I don't understand. I assumed Simmons was kidding around largely and doing sort of like a performative fan type of thing. But there are legitimate media people out there. Like, why are people paying attention to this? Because he's the head coach of a Power 5 football team with millions and millions of dollars on the line and the livelihoods of these student athletes. What are we talking about? It doesn't matter. Of course, we're going to talk about it. Weird. Anyway,
so I think it sounds like they, there was a rapprochement, and there was, but
I suspect that Mina Kimes filled the role of Jimmy Carter in the powwow between Sadat and Begin, right?
She had a very funny post. She's the greatest, obviously, but she wants to pilot this program where professional athletes come to your school to teach parents your kid has no shot. No, get in the box. No, this is Chris Sale. He's gonna throw your kid a slider. Just so you know that your kid's
It's about time we started humiliating minors.
And by the way, that post put me in mind of the most organic version of that, which was when Jimmy Morris is pitching batting practice to the high school kids, and they're like, "Hey, coach, go easy. What's going on? He's like, what? You're throwing 97."
I love this idea. Yes, going out there, but the tweak I would make to it is she says that it's like the scariest professional athletes, you know, trying to help these kids level up with reality. Like a pro career is not in your future. The only thing I would say is there's no one better to be alongside James Harrison or whoever else is delivering that unpleasant message than Kevin Hench. You did that. You put me in my place over and over and over again, way more than it ever needed to happen to let me know that I didn't belong on the 3-on-3 basketball court with you. I can only imagine what counsel you would have for a 16-year-old.
It's funny you mentioned the blue top because I was thinking about my glory days long ago and how, you know, I've never understood as somebody who's just wired to play my hardest all the time. Like, why are you playing if you're not redlining the entire time you're on the court? And so obviously that would extend to the most casual 3-on-3 game. And people would get like, what the fuck, man? Like, I used to strip. Corolla would get a defensive rebound and then I would just fucking strip him every time. Like, it's like, if you fucking dribble to try to get the ball back out to the 3-point line, I'm going to take it away from you. And there was this thing of like, what is wrong with Hench? Like, just let us take the ball out. And I'm like, and I was just redlining the whole time. It's the way I played soccer. It's the way I played basketball. It's my own pathology. Like,
he fell into the swimming pool once, Eddie Spaghetti.
This is not fun. Well, that was solely because I was taking a step back 42-footer.
Grown man playing a meaningless game of 3-on-3 was so intense he fell into a swimming pool. Man.
So everyone was like, God, can that guy tone it down a little bit? And watching the Thunder, it was a little bit like, oh, you have 5 of these douchebags stripping. Like, it was like you're stripping the ball every time, and then Carlisle said something at halftime, and maybe Daniel said, "Hey guys, knock it off. This is not cool that you're taking the ball away from him every time." So the Pacers just did whatever they wanted in the second half. It was very weird to watch. Suddenly the Thunder are getting no turnovers, 0, nothing. But I was thinking about those blue top days, and
I feel like when I watch SGA and Haliburton, neither one of them, I don't like either guy's stroke. Do you? I feel like it's a little bit of a weird little like push retro looking kind of thing. I don't. They don't look as good
Haliburton's shot looks like Tony Randall's in the opening of The Old Odd Couple. Like, it's insane. Like you're literally like, how did no one pull? Right. How did no one pull you aside? Hey, have you played basketball prior to the NBA? No coach ever told you what the fuck? That's insane. That is a stroke in the NBA.
Sort of like Ricky Williams making it in the NFL despite being high. It's sort of like SGA. You're the MVP despite shooting the ball that way. Hey, Jamal Wilkes. Nobody ever got in your head and said, like, stop doing that loop-de-loop. Like, imagine how good you could have been if you didn't do that loop-de-loop at the top of your jump shot.
Wilkes and Haliburton are good examples of it. It can work, your own funky delivery. The Red Sox have this second baseman named Christian Campbell that everyone was very excited about in April. And, home team announcers are always a little like, they're like, are we allowed to say that this guy might suck? We kind of work for the team. The team just extended him. And then when the Red Sox were playing the Angels pretty poorly, our old pal Matt Vasgersian's calling the Angels game. And so locally, the Red Sox is blacked out. I have to listen to the Angels feed. And like, Matt Vasgersian just goes like, this guy's got a weird swing. And I'm like, yeah, he does have a weird swing. Like, it's a very weird approach to the baseball. And does weird swing ever work in the major leagues? Hey, that guy in the Hall of Fame had a really weird swing.
I'm sorry to piss on your point, but what about Hammer and Hank?
Well, it's
Had the
funny.
reverse grip.
Well, but I was talking about Hank Aaron last night because my 11-year-old has a new backhand grip that has the hands separated. The hands are separated on the backhand grip. I'm
Poor
like,
11-year-old girl
I had to tell
having
the
to
Hank
listen to her
Aaron
old man who falls into swimming pools, play 3-on-3, recount
batting,
tales of Hammer and Hank
batting
Aaron.
cross-handed, but they broke the hammer of that bad habit.
And that brings us back to Aaron Rodgers. Look at how neat that was. Let's see. We did it all in about an hour for you. Great stuff as always. Kevin Hench, Eddie Spaghetti.